Gentlemen, it is now 6 p.m. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission work session of Monday, 18th of May, 2026. April, has anyone signed up to speak on any item listed on the work session agenda?
No one signed up. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Our first item is Mr. Shepard from Verdunity. Did I say that? Close. Verdunity. There you go. Had to stop and think about unity. So we're very pleased to have you here tonight, and I understand you're going to give us an overview of the land use fiscal analysis project.
But on who you are and how you got to that name. But as y'all know, or hopefully you know, we put out a request for proposal last fall, and we got some responses, and we scored, and Verdunity was our selected consultant. So we are currently in beginning steps of doing a fiscal analysis study. And so part of that is we wanted him to explain to you what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then what we plan to get out of it and how we want to use it. It's really exciting stuff, especially now with the way the economy is getting tighter. Every time the state legislature goes into session, we never know what we're going to get out of it. So it's just kind of a way to take back a little control and provide some more information as we make the decisions on the future of the city. So we're excited about this project, and he'll just kind of give you an overview of what we're starting out.
It's on now.
No. Yeah.
Too loud? Okay. So everything we do is grounded in fiscal sustainability, and it goes back to, every company has their origin story, right? I'm a civil engineer by degree. Grew up in North Texas designing municipal paving, drainage, water, sewer, a little bit of highway stuff for the first 17 years of my career, and then got the opportunity to interview for my former firm's national director of the community planning practice. Have no idea how I got it, but I did. I do. They told me it's because I knew the matrix of our organization, all the different things that we did, but I really knew how cities worked. And so I went from the world of civil engineering and mostly working in North Texas or across Texas to going all over the country, working with cities of all different shapes and sizes and political angles and all the things. And what I started to see after about a year and a half of doing that was that no matter where I went, big city, small city, rural, urban, suburban, political, left, right, very few cities had the money that they needed to pay for their infrastructure. And so I'm going to get into a little bit of what I discovered there and how that's kind of informed what we do. And this land use fiscal analysis and the development fiscal impact analysis tool that we're going to be giving you all at the end is really kind of the core service that we do as a lead into everything else, whether that's comp plans or CIPs or anything like that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of kind of what the land use fiscal analysis is intended to cover, and then we'll get into some examples of a couple of the things that you're going to see when we finish your analysis. So I already kind of went through this. It's kind of a funny story. I told my wife when I left my national director role to start Verdunity that one of my goals was to not travel as much. And so for about the first, 7-8 years of our firm, we stuck around mostly in Texas, and then other places care about fiscal sustainability too, and so now we're back working across the country. This is a little dated, but it's kind of cool to see more and more places that really care about making their place truly fiscally sustainable. So I always start here when you look at any city's comp plan, website, strategic plan, anything like that, you're going to see some version of we want to be fiscally solvent or fiscally responsible. We want to be environmentally resilient. We want to be socially inclusive. We want to have attainable housing or housing for everyone. We want to enhance the quality of life. All these good things. But when you look at the daily decisions that are being made, those decisions, those discussions, most importantly, the investments, rarely align with those outcomes. And so we're left with fragile, volatile local economies and city budgets. We've got deteriorating neighborhoods and infrastructure. We've got growing affordability gaps. And this last one, frustrated residents. Frustrated residents can mean a lot of things. It can be everything from apathetic to flat out angry, right? Seen some weird things in city halls in the last couple of years around the country. But really what this gets at is we have some different expectations of what we want our communities to be. And most people are not willing and able to pay for what it really costs to deliver on those expectations. But from a development pattern standpoint, we've been doing a lot of policies, a lot of whether it's land use, housing, infrastructure, that lead to these generic, I would argue, unsafe in different ways, places that the bottom part here is what's really important. When you build generic places, it's very difficult for your residents and your residents and your businesses to want to reinvest in those places. A company will come in, they'll do what they need to do in Irving for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're going to move on to the next place. Residents, it's very easy when the neighborhood starts to decline, when housing, property values or whatever get too high or too low, whatever it is, you'll see that tension that if they don't have a reason to love and stay and reinvest in that place, especially here in Texas, they're going to move somewhere else. And we're seeing that with kind of people moving out and out and out. I've been asking this question of city managers and mayors and councils for, the better part of 15 years. When it comes to managing growth and development in your city, what's the biggest challenge or frustration that you're dealing with? And the overwhelming majority, going back 14, 15 years ago, all the way up to today, is some version of this. How do we address the growing wants and needs of our residents with limited resources, right? City managers are definitely in absolute bullseye of this. If they've got developers wanting things, they've got all their department heads wanting things, they've got council wanting things. There's a lot of tension there, and it's a lot of, frankly, a lot of wants. Some of them are needs, but there's a lot of wants there. And not enough resources to pay for it. You've also got this going on, fragile economies, local bankruptcies. It's a lot of times with cities and counties, it's not a hard bankruptcy, it's more kind of slow insolvency, but there's a lot more beyond this slide, whether it's Flint or Jackson, Mississippi. There's a lot of places that are they're struggling to have the money to cover their basic. Water is really the main thing. Right? And when you as a city cannot pay to maintain your water service, that's a problem, right? I like to point out here San Bernardino, California. My dad worked for Shell, so growing up we lived all over the place. And one of those places was San Bernardino. I was little, but it was late 70s, very early 80s when we lived there. And I asked my dad this question back when we first started getting into this. And I was like, what was San Bernardino like when we as a young family were living there compared to North Texas today? And he's like, actually very, very similar. It was the best place to live, work, play. All the companies were moving there. All the people were moving there. In 2011, they filed for bankruptcy, right? Stockton is the same story. Everybody knows the Detroit one. And yeah, there's some pension stuff and other stuff mixed in here too. But when you dig into these, a lot of it has to do with infrastructure funding and the development pattern, which we're going to dig into. Truth in Accounting is a really great group that does some work. They put out this report once a year where they look at the fiscal health of cities, states and cities. But in the last 2025 one, they found that 54 cities across the country. They study, I think it's the top 75. Yeah, it's down there at the bottom. The top 75 largest cities across the country. But 54 of the 75 that they looked at did not have enough money to pay for their bills. When you really account for what it really costs to do some things, and then down there at the bottom, the total debt for those 75 cities was over 300 billion. And every year they've put this out, the number of cities that go into the red goes up. So this was the question that I was asking back in 2010, 2011. With all the growth, or with all the wealth and the growth that we have in this country, we're supposed to be the most prosperous country. Why couldn't our cities pay for their infrastructure? Why do our cities still today struggle to pay for basic services and infrastructure? And one of the reasons, I won't say it's the reason, I won't say it's the only reason, but one of them, and the more we do this, the more strongly I feel about this, is the development pattern. It's where and when and how we've built our cities. And it kind of gets at this. Post-World War II, 1950-ish, we shifted to this very aggressive growth model. All of a sudden, with car and land use policy, housing policy, you could go grab up lots of land, you could build lots of single-family homes in a short amount of time. And so we went all in on this model of fast growth, high quality of life in the short term without fully considering the long-term costs, whether that's the life cycle costs of infrastructure, which we're going to talk about in a second, water quality, water supply, housing impacts, social impacts. There's a lot of long-term impacts that come from the way that we've been building our places. And so what about maintenance after growth, right? It's really great when you're in growth mode and you're building all the new shiny new stuff and you've got everybody moving to your town. But what about maintenance after growth? These are real places that were once, fully inhabited, active. And what you see a little bit over time is as things start to decline a little bit, the people who have the means to do it will move. And those who don't have the means get stuck there, right? And so you get this kind of gradual plateau, and then it really starts to decline because tax revenues decline, sales tax declines. And so one of the things that I wanted to accomplish when we started our firm was take some of these lessons that I had learned from other parts of the country, bring them to Texas, where we're still blessed to have all of the growth and investment that we have, and try to get us to make some changes so that we don't end up like this. But in many, many places, we are building cities that we can't afford to live in as residents, and we can't afford to maintain them as city governments. Sometimes people will push back on me on that, and that's fine. This was my opinion a while back, and it's just gotten stronger the more math that we do on places. But we can get it back. We can get it back, and that's what this land use fiscal analysis process is about. How many of you are familiar with strong towns? Anyone? Some of you? Okay. Chuck from Strong Towns, he's the founder, kind of the main guy behind Strong Towns, which is a nonprofit. His background and mine is very similar. Civil engineers, got into planning. And I actually reached out to him back in 2010 when I was struggling with some of this stuff. And so I've known him a while. We've done a lot of work in collaboration, but over the years. But Chuck does a really, really good job of explaining what he calls the suburban experiment, basically that post-1950, post-World War II development pattern. And I just have a couple of slides in here to hit on it, and I can unpack this later, or you guys can go watch and read more Strong Towns if you want. But this is how we used to build our cities, right? You would have a place, people would move there, they'd build a few buildings, they'd start doing their thing, and over time they would incrementally grow that place. So this little dinky street turns into this, right? There were no zoning codes back then. There were no economic incentives. It was, we build it a little bit of time as the people are here and as we have the resources to do it. So Chuck would say we built things incrementally out, incrementally up, and incrementally more intense. So we would go out a couple of blocks at a time, and then we would say, oh, we need to kind of come back in the middle and add another story. And so we would do that incrementally over time, and it was very, very fiscally, financially sound. right? This is what that development looks like in neighborhoods. This is a neighborhood outside of Indianapolis. It's one of my favorites that I've ever seen in the work that we do. But what do you see on that street on the left? Like, what stands out to you? Anything? The what?
Apartment building.
The apartment building. Okay. What about the setbacks? What about the street? Yeah, the street's really narrow, right? Street's narrow. You got cars parked on it. You've got trees a little further, or they're a little closer to the sidewalk now. And then on the right, you see a bunch of houses with the front porches, right? This is the way we used to build our neighborhoods. It was, Jane Jacobs called it the eyes on the street, right? We designed places so that the activity was in the front of the street, in the public street. The traffic, when there was some, was going slowly. So it was a very kind of human scale process. These were designed well before the car, and then they got retrofitted later when cars came in. But you see a lot of older neighborhoods like this, the older kind of 1940s, 1950s approach. Neighborhoods like this are very hard to build today, right? Because of the codes and because of what we've zoned out of things. And I'm going to come back to that because that's important. So this is traditional. This is pre-World War II how we built places. So it was incremental, and it was also a little more dense, a little more people and walkable focused. Then we shifted to this, right? So a lot of single family, a lot of spread out, a lot of driving everywhere. When everybody drives everywhere, it leads to the big old roads. And at my former life, we loved to design stuff like that, right? That was big money contracts for us. And I did a whole bunch of design into those kind of things over there. And then you obviously have the economic development that comes with it. So when you design housing and development in a more spread out way, you're going to get commercial that fits that same spread out, where their market is a larger market and they have everybody driving to them, which leads to the bigger parking lots and all of that, right? The commercial that you see in these neighborhoods is right down the street, right? So there's a lot more commercial, but it's smaller. This is probably a lot less commercial, but it's bigger. And so you're going to see some of this for Irving when we finish yours, but I've got a mix of slides in here from work that we've done in different places just to kind of illustrate some of the concepts. This is from Victoria, Texas, down by Houston, or down south of Houston. And I love this one because it's the best map I've seen that really kind of clearly shows the post-1950 pattern. You see in the green area down in the core, that's their historic pattern. The square, you can kind of see the gridded streets kind of showing through there. And then you get into the yellow, that's 1950, and then the orange is the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then the red is the new. So you went from a very compact pattern to a very spread out pattern, right? And when they built spread out, they were doing it in lower density development. So in this case, from 1950 to 2020, their area, their city limit area, grew 13 times. Their population only grew 4 times. So they built a bunch of stuff, a bunch of roads and water, sewer, pump stations, water towers, fire stations, all the things for this bigger area. But the density, the cost per household went up, right? More stuff, less people, so the cost per household goes up. That's one of the biggest benefits of density. You spread that cost over more people. This is another way to think about that suburban experiment or the kind of the post-World War II expansion. Every city would start over here on the left side. You're a small town. You've got your little Main Street or Courthouse Square. You build a little stuff. You have a few people. And then you kind of get here in the middle, and all of a sudden the growth comes to you. So the population goes up quite a bit. Developers come in and build a lot of new stuff, and so the average age of your city goes down. The average age of the infrastructure as you drive around town goes down a lot because you're building a lot of new stuff, right? And in this middle part, which I like to say is the best place to live, work, play phase, you drive around town, you see all kinds of new neighborhoods, new schools, new stuff, and the core downtown, that core Main Street or square where your city started, is the historic kind of touristy part of town, right? and you have a lot of revenue from that growth. You get new property tax revenue, new sales tax revenue, getting a lot of revenue, and your costs are still relatively low, right? And so you can use some of that additional revenue to take care of the old part of town. And then usually what a lot of councils have done is when they have surplus revenue, what do in Texas? Lower the tax rate, right? So if you follow this for a while, it's like, oh, we're growing, boom, look at the extra revenue. We'll lower the tax rate, lower the tax rate, lower the tax rate. But how long does a typical street last? Anybody know?
50 years, right?
If you're lucky, 50 years, right? Back then, if it was built back in the 40s, 50s, it's going to go 30 years, whatever. So you fast forward to the right side of this, your city starts to approach build out. You don't have as much new development, so the revenue from new development starts to flatten out, right? And then at the same time, all that infrastructure, all that infrastructure that was put in by developers in the growth phase, it's not preventative maintenance anymore. It hits the end of its life cycle and it has to be replaced, right? This is the typical Texas suburb. This is what the Rust Belt went through probably 15, 20 years before us. Grow over about 20 years is what most cities' kind of growth phase is. And then about 20 or 30 years later, all that infrastructure stuff overwhelms them. So think of somewhere in the Metroplex, any first-ring suburb of Dallas, right? You all kind of know them. When was their growth phase? 70s and 80s, right? What do those places look like today with all of their neighborhood streets and infrastructure? They're struggling, right? So flattening this out a little bit is one of the things that we try to do if it's a growing place. But even if, and I would argue, we'll see where Irving falls, but you're somewhere in that 2 to 3 transition phase, if not in 3. So again, we will unpack this more, but just to think about what happens to a road over time, the cost of a road. We always like to focus on streets. That's what everybody sees. The same thing applies to water, sewer, drainage, parks, facilities. But when they're built, when they're early in their life cycle, you have some low cost preventative kind of stuff. It doesn't cost a lot to take care of them, right? Then you get kind of in the middle, and you've got a little more significant rehab stuff. That's probably what some of your bond money or CIP money goes towards. Maybe some of your general funds goes to that. But then when the road gets to the end of its life cycle, it effectively has to be completely rebuilt, right? And rebuilding roads is not cheap, right? We'll use some number anywhere. We've been using somewhere between $750 to $1.5 million a lane mile. It's creeping towards 2. So if you think about a typical residential street that is probably, what, Justin, what's your typical residential street here? 27, 31, the width?
Pavement is 30.
30? Okay. So we'll make the math easy. Instead of an 11-foot lane, we'll say 10-foot. But if every residential street is essentially 3 lanes, you're looking at somewhere between $3 to $5 million a mile to replace those streets. So one of the things that we're going to do is say, what's all the streets in Irving, and if you had to replace them all today, what does that cost look like? And then if you spread it out over 40 or 50 years and just annualize it in today's dollars, what does that look like? It is a huge number. It's not intended to like scare anybody, but it is intended to show you the magnitude of what's coming that you probably haven't been planning for. So options to close the resource gap, and we're going to get into the specifics of the land use fiscal analysis now, but there's basically a couple options here. You can, if you have a gap, you can increase taxes and fees. Nobody's a big fan of that one, right? You can reduce services. This is what most of our cities are doing now. When you get to budgeting, you say, we have this much money, we're going to pay for this much, and anything else is going to get what? Deferred, cut, whatever, right? But if you defer and cut too many times, your neighborhoods end up like those pictures I showed you, and people are going to leave. So what we like to say is, how can you develop in a more productive manner, or redevelop in a more productive manner that tries to align your development and service model with what your residents are willing and able to pay for. That's really what we're talking about, is what can your community pay for realistically? What can they afford? And then fitting our development pattern and services and infrastructure to that. Alignment requires trade-offs. You cannot have low density and low taxes and predictable public services. You cannot have all three of those. Something has to give. You either have to pay more in taxes. If you want low density and predictable services, you're going to have to pay more in taxes. If you want low taxes and predictable services, then you're going to have some higher density. One of these three has to give a little bit, and it doesn't have to be one across the whole city. You can kind of flex these to different neighborhoods and different places. But this has been a really helpful graphic for us in terms of just talking to the average citizen about how these different variables kind of play together. So when you're talking, if it's a comp plan, if it's a budget, there's a lot of technical jargon that's out there, and what we've found is people understand the language of money. A property owner wants to know the value of their property and what they pay in taxes and where it goes. A developer is always doing pro formas. And so if we can put things in that kind of language, it helps us talk about some of these problems and ultimately work towards more shared solutions. And the question is just to be asking is, how are we going to pay for this? Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that's fine that you want that. How are you going to pay for that? How's the city going to pay for that? It's a really powerful way to kind of disarm some emotional conversations sometimes. So, land use fiscal analysis to inform our development decisions. I think y'all are teeing up for a comp plan update, maybe 1-2 years out. We do this, sometimes we do this as a standalone effort like this. Sometimes we do it as part of a comp plan. And sometimes we just do workshops with councils and folks like you guys. So what is a land use fiscal analysis? It's a parcel-based analysis of the revenues and cost to serve for every property in the city. So for every property in the city, we're going to look at what does it generate in revenue, property tax and sales tax. Sales tax, we can't get down to the specific property, but we can get it into areas. So for every property in the city, we're going to look at what does it generate in revenue and what does it cost to serve and what's that net. You're going to find some properties that generate more in revenue than they cost, and you're going to find a lot of properties that cost more than they bring in revenue. So generally, you think citywide budget, they're going to match, right? Revenues match, costs, they're equal. But when you start to look at different development patterns and parcels, some are up here and some are down here. Another thing that we'll do, and probably and I show a couple of examples of this here in a little bit, but so we do it for the current budget, and then we take what if you had the money that you really need for your streets or your parks or any of these unfunded liabilities. We'll work with staff to figure out exactly which ones you want us to incorporate. But we say, what if you had what you really needed, and we'll layer that into it. So you can see what things look like in current budget conditions, and then you can see what they look like when you really load the full costs. And when we do that, that's what really starts to expose the larger lot suburban model that has wider streets and cul-de-sacs and is further out on the edge. There's a lot more cost to serve of that, especially infrastructure. And the opposite of that is density. There's always perceptions that density has a lot more cost to it. That's not always true. And so we try to drill those numbers down so that we can prove it up with data and show what things cost. And then you can kind of slice and dice this by different lot sizes and zoning and neighborhoods and all kinds of things that we'll get into. Lots of ways back to that fiscal sustainability is a common language. There's a lot of ways that this can be applied. It can just be a common language for education engagement. If your city says we do want to be a financially resilient place, it's a way for residents to hold elected officials accountable to that. Instead of just using it as a campaign thing, they can actually be held to some of those decisions of, is this really in the best fiscal interest of our city? It's very powerful in Jocelyn's world of land use and zoning and development evaluation of how do we align our development pattern with what residents are willing and able to pay, not just today, but in the future. And then there's other ways to look at things like your infrastructure strategy, economic development. There's a lot of different things that can come out of this that every one we do is different. Every city has different takeaways from this process of where they want to focus. Some say we want to reduce the width of our roads. Some say we want to focus on vacant lots and infill. Some say they want the exact same pattern that they have, but they just need to do better at charging what it really costs to serve that pattern, right? It's not our job to tell you what's right or wrong. Our job is to show you the data, facilitate conversations, and let Irving decide what Irving wants to do. The goal, though, is to make sure everything aligns with what people are actually paying. So we're going to do stuff like this. This is actually Irving's. We'll do kind of a high-level dive into your budget. One of the things that we like to look at is just what's your general fund mix between property tax and sales tax. You guys, as a larger city, as a more mature city, you have a higher property tax percentage than a lot of places do. Younger growing cities will have 20 to 30% of their revenue from property tax. And a lot more from development fees, right? And the narrative with them is you have to build stuff so that the property tax from what goes on the ground can replace the revenue you're getting from the development fees. Sales tax, I would think for a city the size of Irving, your sales tax maybe be a little bit more, but we'll see and dig into that a little bit. On the expense side, something that we like to do is it's a very a couple of very basic metrics, but we take your general fund. We do this for the revenue too, but for this slide, it's on the expense side. Take your general fund expenditures, divide those by your population, your household, and your city limit area, and you can get a general fund per capita, per household, and per acre. When you look at those over time, it can kind of show you some interesting trends, and they do tend to show in general over most of the cities that we've looked at. The more density you build, your general fund, your cost per capita and cost per household will go down, and your general fund per acre will go up. So just another metric that we look at. We'll look at your population density trend over time. Sometimes you can see some correlations from those general fund numbers and the population changes that have been made over the years. We will dig into your street costs. This one's from New Braunfels, but what we like to do is look at your pavement condition study, talk with your engineers, public works folks, get that big number for your street replacement, and then we'll spread it out over 5 or 10 year periods based on the condition of the streets. So the worst stuff has to be fixed first. The good stuff gets pushed off in the future. But in the case of New Braunfels, I don't recall what their total number was, but you can kind of see here that they have, they had $35 million right in 2025 that needs to be taken care of now. Their public works folks were struggling to get the money just for that 35, but the 2030 number really jumped out to them. The 2035 and 2040, they felt like, well, we can kind of plan and set up some bond elections and other things to help with those. But 2030, we did this study in 2024, the end of 2024. 2030 wasn't that far away, and that's a big number. So this isn't the only number. Public Works, Engineering always have some studies that can look at with some regular investment how you might be able to spread these out a little bit more. But I'm surprised how many places we talk with that have no idea. If we just ask the question of like, what would it take for you to replace all the streets in Irving today or all of your water lines today, we get crickets in a lot of places, and that's something that I hope we fix with this process. I have a hunch your guys and gals probably have some level of a handle on this, but it'll be fun to dig in with them. Okay, so we get into the value per acre mapping. What we do is we start with the assessed value of the property, and we just do the assessed value divided by the size of the parcel, and you get assessed value per acre. And then we drill down at the actual tax revenue that's collected, both property tax and sales tax, and then we layer costs into it. This is Dallas County from the most recent certified tax rolls. the darker the green and the higher bar, the higher the value per acre is, right? But it's always interesting to look at these at a county level and just see the power that a downtown Dallas has in terms of that value per acre, right? You can also see Irving pretty clearly on this. What I like to point out in any DFW area conversation I'm having is we're all familiar with that conversation about the lack of investment in South Dallas, right? I haven't seen very many maps that show it as powerfully as this one does. Look at all of the dark green that goes up between 75 and 35, right? The V in the north part of the county. But the county, Dallas County, has to serve a lot of this, right? So if you're the city of Dallas or Dallas County, a lot of those vacant lots or undervalued lots, investing back in some of them and raising that value, can help spread the cost across the rest of the county or the city. The same thing's going to be the case here. We're going to dive into Irving and show you these same kind of maps to see where your where your most fiscally productive places are and where the places are that that maybe aren't doing as well. It's also sometimes we'll get comments from some of the different suburbs that think they're quite affluent and doing well, and on this map they're just a little bitty blip. So these are two from Brownsville that we did a couple of years ago that just kind of show the power of the graphics. I like these two just because it's one of the more extreme ones that we've done. So this was an ROI one, so return on investment. So this is current budget, every dollar that's spent, what do they get back? And then the green, if it's yellow or green, it's getting at least that dollar back. If it's the red, it's losing money. So this was their current budget condition. We did their street analysis. They had close to $1.3 billion was the cost to replace all of their streets back in 2017. $66 million a year. They were spending around $3 million a year. So got some ugly words from the council dais when we presented this that night. But when you take that unfunded $63 million a year and you layer it into these properties, that's what it looks like. So this is what they have in current budget, and things are looking good. This is what they really need when you factor in just the street costs. We didn't do parks, we didn't do drainage, so this was just streets. But what you can take away from some of these is you can look at with this map, you can look at where the places that stayed green, even when you load more costs on them, and kind of dig into why. And a lot of times it's the core that's their core downtown, or here's some of their kind of newer commercial mixed use stuff along the corridor. But what Brownsville took away from this is they wanted to reinvest down in the downtown and the neighborhoods around it, bump their downtown ROI even more, and then elevate some of the housing and neighborhoods around it. We'll get into looking at different kinds of developments and comparing the numbers just for those. So we'll take rural, suburban, single-family, townhomes. We can kind of pick some different ones that staff want to see. We'll pull some examples. In this case, the rural example on the left is getting 98. This is just assessed value, so it's getting a little under 99,000 per acre. The suburban single-family in the middle is getting 2.5 per acre, and the townhomes are getting over 17 million per acre. That's just the assessed value. When you go in and, when we allocate costs to these, there's a different approach to all of these of how much infrastructure they take and shared parking and things like that. But when you just look at the assessed value per acre, if you said the land that Irving has is just, this area inside the horseshoe here, right? That's the land that Irving has to develop on it. If you built it all with stuff on the left, you're going to have a certain assessed value out of that, right? Versus if you built it with all on the right, you're going to have a much higher assessed value. And without changing the tax rate, you're going to have a lot more tax revenue, right? So the development pattern is a lever that we haven't talked enough about in budgeting. We always talk about the tax rate and fees and things like that, but you can generate more revenue to the city just with the development pattern itself. And yes, these all have costs with them too, and that's what we're going to get into when we allocate and show you some of the net. the net results. We also do this on the commercial side. You got a suburban pad site, you got a big box, you got the downtown grid. Downtown grids in almost everywhere outperform the big boxes, the suburban stuff. The beauty of the downtown grid is they have the mix of all the different smaller, different shapes and sizes, right? When one business goes out, another one can come in. When the Walmart leaves or the big box leaves, we're all seeing what's kind of going in some of those, right? There are some cool projects now that are some of these big box sites in some other parts of the country. They're big enough sites that you can actually retrofit them to be, a new kind of mixed use node. Y'all have some of those that are big enough to look at things like that. But just understanding that the development pattern can generate more revenue to the city without changing the tax rate. Had a lot of really powerful conversations with residents that have come into a comp plan or a code or something, and they're very anti-density, right? And you say, okay, this is fine, but with this, here's what your tax rate would have to go to pay for this. Or if you approve a little bit of density in certain places, the city can get some additional revenue, and you can keep your tax rate where it is or close. And a lot of those people will move towards supporting some density. It's just where does it go? How is it designed? And that's a very different conversation than heck no, we don't want any density in our town at all, right? And it's just this, looking at this stuff for the city is just like a personal, like an investment portfolio, right? You're going to sprinkle things around, high risk, low risk, all that. It's the same thing for a city. You don't want to go all in on one or the other. I think the advantage in today's market in North Texas that places like Irving and some of the older cities have is you have some of the bones with the lot size and the gridded network and some of that both older and younger generations are looking for more of those type of neighborhoods, and not the drive everywhere suburban single family. We have plenty of that across the Metroplex, and the places out in southern Oklahoma are continuing to build some of that. But there's a lot of demand for walkable mixed use at different scales. So there's an opportunity to kind of marry the market with what the city needs to do to strengthen your fiscal situation. This is another slide that's always really powerful in work that we do. It just shows the power of kind of the small development. This is just single family. This is from Taylor outside of Austin. This is single-family development. Across the bottom, you see the different lot sizes. So the smallest lot sizes are on the left, the biggest ones are on the right. The blue bars is the average home value or average improvement value on those lot sizes. And yeah, you might look at some of those average home values and be like, what? A house costs $150? But that blue line, what's really important here is that dark blue line that goes down from left to right. That's the revenue per acre. So the smallest lots are the most affordable for residents, and they have the highest revenue per acre to the city. Not saying we need to go off and build nothing but 2 10th-acre lots, but we've zoned out a lot of that, and there's a big demand for smaller spaces, and it's a fiscal win for cities. What a lot of the builders want to build is right in here, right? And so this has been, the numbers are different, but the trend has been the same in every single city that we've ever modeled. Another thing to think about density, this is a graphic from Eric Kronberg and Associates outside of Atlanta that does some really good housing-specific work. But it just shows two blocks. Everything's the same. Dimensions of the block are the same. All the infrastructure in front, water, sewer, drainage, that's all there. Police, fire, all city services and infrastructure there are there. The bottom block has 2 houses on it, right? So all that infrastructure around that block is divvied up across those 2 homes. The one on the top goes all the way to the other extreme and crams all kinds of different housing in there, different lot sizes and housing types and ADUs and all the things. But you can see with more households, you have more households to distribute that infrastructure over, right? And yes, you zoom out citywide and you have some high density and this kind of averages out. But if you really think about it, should these people get the benefit of that up there, right? So it's interesting when you kind of zoom in and look at the block level or look at just kind of development levels of what those costs are. And I always caution people that do kind of high-level fiscal projections, and they use the average cost per household. This is a question we always get. Who knows how far we'll get into this one before we get it, but people always want to know what's the average household price in my city need to be to pay for everything. I cannot answer that question because there's a lot of variables that go into it like this, right? But we can kind of hone in on what does it cost for different kinds of development. If it's single family, quarter acre lots or 60-foot lots, or if it's mixed use, we can start to hone into what does the value need to be for that kind of pattern. We'll get into some comparisons like this. This was part of a comp plan we did for a really fast-growing place outside of Austin too. But we take a vacant property and we look at if we just put this in with single family, with mostly single family zoning, you got average home of $325,000. You've got none of the other kinds of housing. You have a maybe some commercial right there, maybe. But you can kind of see the taxable value, the net costs, and that one's so it's got no commercial space. It's got a little under 5 acres of green space, and it's netting out at a loss of $81,000 per year for this parcel. If we mixed use this thing, go traditional neighborhood, we mix different types of housing and lot configurations, you actually end up with almost double the green space. You've got everything from an $800,000 estate home to an $85,000 ADU. Lots of stuff all together. 3 generations of a family could all afford to live within walking distance in this neighborhood. And oh, by the way, it's fiscally positive for the city, right? So this mixed use stuff has a lot of fiscal benefits to the city, and it also opens up that affordability spectrum more for residents who would like to stay close to their kids or their grandparents or whoever. Again, this is a lot harder to build with our current zoning codes and stuff, and I'm sure Jocelyn and her team have done some great work to allow more of this mixed-use kind of stuff. But there's way too many places that this is very easy and fast and quick to build, and it's just driving cities towards insolvency like all day, every day. And they're kind of hoping that the sales tax and commercial is going to make up the difference. So sales tax and commercial does need to carry its weight, but if all you build is low density, this stuff, sales tax is not going to make up the difference to pay for all the infrastructure, right? And the other part that we're starting to see is there's a lot of people that are starting to be priced out of neighborhoods like this that are looking for stuff like this, and they can't find it in their city. So if you want to keep the people that you have in Irving here, you might need to look at a balance. I'm getting to the end here. So this is Tale of Two Cities. These are 2 that Josh did. Lancaster, Josh from our team now. Lancaster, California, Eugene, Oregon. We really like to show these 2, and we've started to put some comparisons from several Texas cities together too. But you can see that top line of their population is pretty similar, right? But if you go to the third line, and we really should reorder these and put the road stuff down, but if you look at that third line, look at the square miles of the area, right? Lancaster is a much bigger city. Eugene is a more compact. They've got topography that kind of forces them in a little bit. But because of the different size, city limit size, you've got a density in Lancaster, California of 2,100. Eugene's got over double that density, right? And where that really matters is back to the feet of road per that second line. 2 things are happening in Lancaster. It's more spread out, so they have more roads, and it's back to that Victoria map that I showed you. It's lower density, so you have less households to pay for it. So that just shows the feet of road per person. Now, if I told you that was, I think, let's say $350 bucks a foot, that starts to show you kind of what the annual cost, for road maintenance is for residents. So density in the right places has a lot of power. So to wrap us up, ultimately, the city's goal, every city's goal. If you say you want to be fiscally sustainable, you need to be balancing your development and services with what your residents are willing and able to pay for, not just now, but in the future. Sometimes I'll get the question of, well, some of our residents are just here for the next 5 years, and then when their kids graduate, they're going to move off somewhere else. But a lot of the folks that live and work in Irving want to stay here. They have an expectation. A lot of people have the expectation that when their city or when their street needs to be fixed, their city has the money to pay for it. And usually that's not the case. So I think getting these things out in the open and talking about them is the sooner you put it out there, the more transparent of a conversation you can have about how are we going to line these things up over the years. I always like to mention too, if there's and Jocelyn, you can take this back to staff or whatever, but there's all these ways that this can be applied, right? There's a lot of benefits to all of the departments in participating in this. If you want to really maximize and strengthen the fiscal health of your city, you need your planning and your engineering and your public works and your finance and economic development all working together, because there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Like what works in one neighborhood is not going to be right in another one. And so when you start talking about, I'll give you an example. The public works guys are going to start with saying, we don't want utilities under the street. We want them behind the sidewalk, up in the parkway where we can get, it's very easy to access and replace them, right? That's fine, but when you push stuff out, you're using up more land, you're pushing the houses back, you have bigger lots, and that's reducing the assessed value per acre of that development. And so if you really want to have the money for the roads and the street trees and all of that, they will also say, well, I don't want to do street trees, they're hard to maintain, they bust up the sidewalk, et cetera. But when you do things like that, you spend a little bit more money on putting it in, you spend a little bit more money on maintenance, but you get the value back from that more urban environment. So just getting all the different departments and even your neighborhood groups, there's also a lot of really low-cost things that come out of this that residents will come up with that can just preserve and maintain their neighborhoods. And if you're preserving the quality of life in their neighborhood, it's going to preserve and protect those property values too. So lots of different ways to connect this in. We'll get into this as we talk with the different departments through the journey, but I guarantee every department in the city, especially you're getting into budgeting, right? So everybody wants money. All the departments want money. And so a conversation about how can we grow the pot by modifying our development pattern a little bit helps everybody. So just a few quotes that have come from different places that we've worked. Residents, this makes so much sense. I didn't realize we were so far behind on funding our infrastructure. That third one from a council member, about creating transparency and accountability between elected officials and their constituents, I thought was a really good one. The last one there, recently retired city manager, public works background. He's worked around the Metroplex for a while, but I think this is the one that I'll land on, is that addressing aging infrastructure and resetting residents' expectations for what can be covered with current tax rates is likely going to be one of, if not the primary challenge for Texas city managers over the next several decades. So we have expectations of, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but people want the Cadillac and they're paying for the Yugo or the Honda Civic or whatever you want to plug in there, right? But we have a big well, he's like, I know what a Yugo is. But, right, we have expectations that, we've been getting all this stuff for 30, 40, 50 years of all of this high-quality development, but we have not had to pay the real cost of it because those real costs have not come due. And now they're coming, and so cities like Irving and everywhere all over Texas are starting to have those conversations about how do we maintain what the past folks built. I don't know, I'm missing the council briefing date, but here's some next steps as far as the study goes. We are up to our eyeballs in data collection, cleaning, refinement, some back and forth with staff, getting additional data, looking at the maps, looking at the budget stuff, and this is a fun time for our team because all of these initial thoughts start to bubble to the surface of what we think we're seeing, right? And then we go through the analysis of layering all the costs in and doing all the maps. We're going to come back, I think, mid-July-ish is when we have, 16th is when we have council briefing. That council one will probably be a little bit of a hybrid of a little bit of this and a little bit of the results. I'll talk with Jocelyn, see what we want to do there. But end of July, we should have the majority of the analysis and the maps done. We'll work with staff, and a lot of times we'll see something on the map, and staff will be like, that doesn't look right, or what about that one? And usually it has something to do with the tax data that we have to kind of aggregate a couple parcels or split something up, technical stuff. But we'll go through some back and forth with staff to revise stuff in August, get the whole report put together in September. And then as we're starting to talk about the results of the whole fiscal analysis, we're also going to be working on the DFIA, that Development Fiscal Impact Analysis tool. And just to talk briefly about that, what that is it's a spreadsheet-based tool that your team will be able to use for any incoming development. You'll be able to plug some numbers in and show what's the estimated revenue we're going to get, what's the cost that it's going to serve, what's that net. We can add some other variables in there for housing mix. There's different variables we can add to it, but the real purpose of it is to, we can't get it down to the penny, but we can use some context info from the citywide analysis. We can use some information that developers provide, and especially that life cycle infrastructure cost and the service costs. Developers are not going to come to you and say, they're going to show you all the revenue it's going to bring, right? All the tax base, all that stuff. They're probably going to say the initial infrastructure, initial cost is going to be this, and oh, by the way, city, will you help us? With 380 or subsidies or whatever it is. But a lot of those analysis that we look at or asked to do a third-party review of do not include the life cycle infrastructure cost. And so we're going to be looking at it specifically from that lens of anything that comes in. It needs to pay for itself, and then it might need to make up some of the gap to close the citywide gap as well. So that's the whole the whole project. Everything all done should be complete by Thanksgiving. We may, depending on how meetings go and what happens over the next few months, we might be able to finish it in October, but somewhere in that October to November range. And I would say if the DFIA tool, I haven't talked with Jocelyn with you about this yet, but if getting that sooner is really important, we probably could start that end of August, about the time when we're putting the whole report, writing the report and all that. We'll have the data and the numbers that we could start to work on this spreadsheet. So I know that was long. I know it's late. I always like to wrap up with just anybody that's in public service, bless you. I could not do it, either working for the city or donated my time on what you all are doing. So if y'all have any questions, if you want to let this sit for a little bit and then something pops in your head later that you have a burning question that you can send it to Jocelyn. That's usually what happens. People go home and they think about this a little bit, and then they're like, ooh, I really want to know about this or that. But we're very transparent. We like to stay connected. We like to try to answer as many questions as we can through the process, and hopefully you guys learn a little, we learn a little bit, and your whole community comes out with a much clearer picture of where you sit on the fiscal sustainability spectrum when we're done.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Any questions tonight? Anybody think I'm just full
I
of
have one question
blankety
for you.
blank?
Are you going to be reviewing our current ordinances that we have in place and utilizing your data to that, or are you going to be suggesting changes to our current ordinances based upon what you
Great question.
talked about today?
So the baseline analysis is going to be on your current land use and your current zoning. So it's gonna look at everything based on current zoning, and then from that we'll have conversations with staff about, usually somewhere towards the end, some of the staff will say, oh, we might want to use this to look at lot size stuff or setbacks, whatever it may be. But no, we're not specifically going to make recommendations on code changes as part of this. But we have been asked to do that as a follow-on thing, whether it's part of the comp plan or separate code or something like that. But there are going to be some very clear data that comes out of this that you might want to look at something. Or it might confirm what you have is great. Jocelyn might know. Any other questions?
Gentlemen, anything else?
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, I do have a quick
Oh.
question. I have two quick questions. The city has capital impact fees by zone. So will that be something, I guess the outcome of the data will influence some of that information and whether those impact fees might change?
So.
Just like with variances that may
Yeah,
alter what
what we will try to do with cost allocation and revenue is map whatever information we get, we'll work. We may have to make some assumptions and different things, but we'll try to model current conditions as best as we can with all the money in and all the money out. As far as recommendations, impact fees specifically, water and sewer enterprise funds in general, they tend to follow this same trend of the more people you put in an area, the more revenue you're going to generate, the more spread out you do something, the more infrastructure costs you're going to have. So water and sewer, we've seen this for the last 20 years across the Metroplex of anytime we do a study, it says, the city needs this amount to take care of water, and then we look around at our neighbors and say, oh, our rates are here, so we need to drop our utility rates to this. Same thing for impact fees, they get kind of tricky with redevelopment versus greenfield is easier to estimate. Redevelopment's a little more, of a challenge, but it sounds
So we
like.
end up using this data for a lot of things, whether it's reviewing zoning, whether it's reviewing tax rates or impact fees. Okay, so it's really that you're not recommending anything, as you said, you're providing data and
Yeah, at the
results.
end of our reports, we always have some, some recommendations that really jump out to us. So we might talk about, the need to focus infill in an area or, the need to look at more detailed analysis of like your your street replacement plan or maintenance plan or something like that. But we don't get to the level of you need to change this zoning or you need to charge that for that thing. That we let this kind of be the seed
Yeah.
data and for those conversations.
And the information is only valuable for how long into the future?
Another really good question. It really depends on kind of how fast your city is growing. In some fast growth places, we've said updated as frequently as 2 years. I think 3 to 5 years, in Irving would make some sense. You don't want to do any more regular than 2 years because like whatever changes you make are going to need some time to go get built on the ground, right? But there are some things with the DFIA tool. There's some base numbers in there that staff can update annually. The general fund budget, the population, some of those kind of numbers. So there will be some things that can annually be updated that will kind of make the analysis tool a little kind of more current. But the citywide analysis, like this is a lot of work to go through and crunch and allocate costs citywide. Jocelyn was asking me this, and I think I'm going to suggest probably 3 years is when we take a look at the next one. But yeah, it's a, development doesn't, especially in play, it takes a while. So whatever comes out of the study, you got to do stuff with your CIP or your zoning or whatever, and then it has to get built, and then those changes have to get reflected in property values and service costs. So you're probably 3 to 4 years before anything meaningful cycles through. And we've had several cities reach out to us this year that we did original studies with them in 2017, 2018, and they've reached back now. And initially when we started doing this, I wasn't really thinking about doing an update, but now that several cities, they want to go back and look and say, hey, what, like a Brownsville or Pflugerville, we've done a couple for, what does it look like after 5-6 years of changes have come in.
Thank you, Kevin. Fascinating. Anybody else?
You mentioned the sales tax were a little bit lower in Irving, the revenue. What do usually cities do to increase the?
So I think it was like 32% or something like, just percentage-wise, the dollars, there's a lot. It was just the 32%. I was just expecting the sales tax to be a little bit, I was kind of just context of a lot of other places that we looked at. I was thinking this was going to be a little more like 40% sales tax, 40% property tax. So that's actually a good thing that you have as much in property taxes as you do. The more, well, depending on what happens in Austin, the more you have in property tax, the more financially strong you are. The places that have 20% of their general fund from property tax are not very resilient. They're very dependent on sales tax, and sales tax could go poof quickly. So yeah, when we'll know a little bit more when we see kind of where that sales tax is coming from, and there may be opportunities to to find some ways to do what I call the double boost, where you can change some development where you're boosting property tax and sales tax together with some infill, mixed use redevelopment kind of projects.
Fascinating. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you all very much.
Great presentation. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so moving on to our second item, we have our famous Troy, who reads in color, I think.
Oh, man. Look at that. There we go. What?
You're losing your audience.
Oh, let them talk. It's all right. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Good
Go
evening.
ahead.
All right,
Please
good-
start. Thank you, Troy. Sorry.
No problem. Good evening. My name is Troy Wynn of Planning and Zoning Department. And this evening, we've got some proposed future land use changes to make to our future land use map. If you'd like, I can go through the land use categories, or we can go straight into the proposals. Excellent.
Adam says, let's do it.
That's good. That's what I was hoping y'all would say.
So we're going to follow his lead today.
All right. Right here, we've got some property up by Cistercian, just north of University of Dallas. Currently, the future land use map indicates urban district and open space. We'd like to bring those both into public, semi-public, because they will not be developed as urban district or open space. So just clean up this area here is the proposal. All right. Then over here at Shady Grove.
Troy, hang on a second. Do we want to just say yay, nay? Any questions as he goes along?
That works.
Okay, so if you have a question, pop up, please. Thank you.
All right. Over here at Loop 12 and Shady Grove, just east of Loop 12, we have this area here that is currently designated for regional commercial and for heavy industry. And why is that there? Okay. And regional commercial is supposed to be big boxes that attract retail sales from across the region, but this is a little tucked away. So we'd like to bring most of this into our manufacturing warehouse district, and also scale down this industrial here to also be the manufacturing warehouse, And also note that this apartment complex here, go ahead and mark that for preservation. And we are not proposing any zoning changes. These here are our future land use designation changes, which is to guide any future discussion about changes in the land use in an area. It doesn't force it. It just guides the conversation later on in the future.
So let me ask just a question, because, so say, for example, that area along the old Texas Stadium gets developed, and then we're having
Here.
down the street, right?
Mhm.
We're having manufacturing and warehouse in that area.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if that's the right thing to do by changing it from where it's regional commercial now.
The Texas Stadium area is up here, and before you get down to this residential area, you've got another place that's already heavy industry. And we'll be discussing that area a little bit later.
Okay.
And this here's just way down here, and we're looking to clean up this area here that's already also mostly manufacturing and warehouse at this point in time.
Is that over by where Frito-Lay is at and
Frito-Lay is
further up?
right about here.
Okay.
Stadium's up off the screen.
I just had a question. Is that mid-density residential, that's what's there now, so you're just protecting it?
Yeah, this here's an existing apartment complex. It's already got a lot of people living there.
Okay.
But currently is zoned as regional commercial.
No, currently the future land use designation says
Regional
if you
commercial.
if you bulldoze this apartment complex, make it like a Home Depot or something like that.
So if you bulldoze it, why do you want to build back mid-density residential in the middle of manufacturing?
We'd
And
like it
other
to never be
regional commercial.
bulldozed, actually.
Huh?
We'd like it to not be bulldozed because we need the housing. So we're
But-
saying, please,
Keep it,
keep it, and if you knock it over, build back better,
right.
you know, but let's not eliminate the housing stock when we're in a short supply of housing.
And these are also 20, 25-year plans, so these aren't forever plans, and that's why we're constantly looking at these every year. So, in 20 or 25 years, do we think this is still going to be a multifamily complex? Those are kind of questions that we go through each time. And April, I just want to comment on yours. You're going to see here a little bit later, kind of the area, this is, of course, on the east side of 12. On the west side of 12, on Irving Boulevard, as we go into downtown, we are starting to relook at that area to
Okay.
be more complementary to downtown and kind of try to change that development pattern, ideally, long-term. So we are thinking about kind of not just the stadium site, but also downtown and Heritage and how we can maybe help shape that a little bit different.
So when I see current regional commercial, and then the proposal is to change to manufacturing warehouse, I immediately think about, all the warehouses that's going up off of 161. And so that's why I'm saying we've got an apartment complex that's already in that area, and I don't see how those complement that area.
Right now, all of this is warehouse.
Okay, so
Yeah, all of this is warehouse. So the future land use plan is currently saying, all these warehouses in here, when you get the chance, make it regional commercial. And so there's a couple of single-family lots in here that have been cut off, but the rest of this is mostly warehouses mixed in. And we'd like to say, well, let's not change that. Let's keep it warehousing, and let's protect that.
Okay,
And
I
and let's
think I'm-
scale down these warehouses here that are marked for industrial and say they should not be any more than the warehouses that they are.
So maybe I'm confused by the colors, and maybe
Yeah.
you need to go over that, because it says change. So current is regional, commercial, industrial. The bullet points that you have there?
Yeah. Yeah, regional commercial and industrial, that's here and here.
Okay, but then your proposal is to change to manufacturing and warehouse,
Yeah,
and because that apartment complex is there,
Yeah.
keep the mid-density residential.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And my thought is, even if I live in mid-density residential, do I want to manufacture in a warehouse where I live?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And we also, as we look at these, I just wanted to add that this also provides, these are very small lots, very small businesses. So we want to preserve the ability for people to have their small businesses here. And, because we will talk to people occasionally, it's like, well, I just need an acre, I just need a half acre, where can I go? And so we see this as creating a safe place, for lack of a better word, for some of those small businesses to go and to grow, hopefully, and stay in Irving.
But wouldn't that be regional commercial versus manufacturing warehouse?
So regional commercial, or any commercial, is public oriented. You and I can go there, it's just like auto
Yeah.
repair or something, you and I can go there. This is more, maybe small cottage type, maybe landscaping companies, places that are not public oriented. And then when you see the manufacturing warehouse, the intention there is that all the activities happen inside. So that's one reason we don't always like industrial except in certain places, because industrial could be a little heavier, maybe a little bit outdoor,
Right.
where the manufacturing warehouse, the intention is that the activities occur inside. There may be some storage outside, but that the activities occur inside the building.
Okay, I get that. And again, maybe I'm mixing things here, but if I'm in a mid-density residential, why would I want to have the manufacturing warehouse in that same area?
For the,
Even if they're doing the work inside. And I'm just, from a visual perspective, and I'll just call out 161. There's a huge warehouse that's being built right now.
a lot of them, yes.
Yeah. But right on the other side is a single-family home, community.
Well, and we think too, in some of these, who was there first? Who's the fish out of water here? And both the industrial, I think the industrial was there probably before it was incorporated in the city of Irving, in this area in general. And the multifamily's been there for a while too. So they've been working together for many decades. And so here we're just saying that if we're going to have some of the small lot manufacturing opportunities, this would be appropriate for
Yeah.
that.
And get rid of the industrial.
Well, take it down a notch, yeah.
Yeah, the site that's designated industrial is warehousing. And we'd like to say, let's not make it any more than warehousing, so let's take it down to the warehousing.
I guess your colors don't match that, because the proposed change is expanding the purple, not limiting it.
This here is marked for industry. We'd like to scale it down to the warehousing. And this area here that's marked for retail to attract people from all over the Metroplex, we're saying that since it's warehousing and it's not got the quick access on the freeway, let's keep it the warehousing that it is.
So make it actually, you're coloring it warehousing, where before it was,
Yeah. Before we were encouraging a change. Now we're encouraging it to stay what it is.
and make it what it is. The
Yeah.
color make it.
Yeah.
I still don't.
Yeah,
But I'm
I
only
think
one
it's,
person
I think, no,
speaking.
I said the same thing. I kind of feel like the mid-density residential is the fish out of water
If
there.
y'all would like us to take that out, we can. I mean, we're here for your input, feedback, guidance.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We're doing the same thing between Pioneer and the railroad tracks. We're just taking an area that we thought would change or do something, and we're just putting it back to what it is now. Correct? Pretty much?
Again, it's just future land use, so what we're doing in Heritage is actually a full rezoning.
Yeah.
To where we're changing the allowed use legally by right. What we're doing here is just changing what we think this area will probably be in the next 20 to 25 years and what's appropriate here.
Yeah, but it's also encouraging sort of development, because these little shops, as they go out, it's going to be hard for them to meet the regional commercial zoning, and they'll still be able to meet the warehouse zoning fairly easy to keep,
Keep
future
other small
development.
businesses come in,
Yes.
right.
If they request a zoning change, it will need to comply with the manufacturing warehouse if this were approved.
And to be regional commercial, those are larger scale, therefore it'd be a lot of assembling of properties that's going to happen, which is quite difficult because people are different stages of their business life. So we thought for several reasons, the main one being the scale of the businesses there.
And
this would be
basically
appropriate.
keeping the apartment complex the way it is now, it sort of gives them a right, if something was to happen, for them to rebuild without having to go through a bunch of problems or issues.
Yeah, unless it's completely inappropriate, that's kind of been our policy to try to preserve the multifamily that's here. We're not adding multifamily, but if it's there, we want to at least respect what it is.
Okay.
So I'm guessing we're okay with the mid-density residential, and city council will be weighing in as well, right?
Yeah.
And you will too. I mean, this will be coming back to you. This is just your first presentation. So the steps would be, if you have things you want us to change, this is not your last time to see this.
Okay.
There will have to come through the formal recommendation process where it will be on your agenda, and you'll make a recommendation on all of them or them individually. If you want us to come back with something, we can do that. So this is just your first flush.
All right.
Maybe, Troy, you could highlight a few other similar cases where we are keeping the mid-density residential in the future, if it's not too much trouble, so we have a comparison.
Okay. All right. This is the next area we're looking at is at Beltline and Shady Grove. Right here, the future land use plan indicates that we'd like to bring regional commercial back in here and also across the top of the Graff Farms development. And that this mobile home park should all go to traditional neighborhood. What we'd like to do is scale this down to local commercial to serve the nearby area instead of trying to attract people from across the region. Would like to bring this to local commercial, once again, to serve Irving residents as opposed to trying to draw people up Beltline and on to Shady Grove. Would like to let the mobile home park go to compact neighborhood, both of the mobile home parks, to reflect what they are. And also, I've got a little single-family home that needs to be marked single-family. So,
I thought this one made complete sense.
okay. All right. Up here is just south of the Texas Stadium site. All right. We've got this area designated for regional commercial, and a piece of land that TxDOT took, and we hope to one day get back in the market. And we'd like to designate that as to manufacturing warehouse to kind of scale it down from the heavy industry to the south. We don't see it being a great spot for retail sales, given how tricky it is to navigate that area with the current placement of street exits.
So you're looking at the older.
Yeah, this here's the stadium site.
Okay.
This
that's
here's
what
just
I-
south of it.
Just out of curiosity, why was the one place undesignated on the left?
TxDOT wiped out that parcel when they took the property for the 183 expansion. Would like to start showing it again on our maps so that if it ever comes back into play, we've got a designation ready to go. We've got another case like that I think we took care of last year.
Jocelyn, so, I'm sorry, Troy, can you go back? So just one question on that. I mean, I know nothing has been determined on what's going to actually go on that site, but there's, grandiose ideas about something really nice going there. So does it make sense to have warehouse across from that?
It's that balance between kind of reality and function and, what the dream could be. It's, people think that it's great to be at an intersection, but it's actually extremely difficult. The access is very hard to get to, and so if you put some type of, entertainment here or even a hotel or something, it'd be very difficult for someone to get across 183 unless there's a bridge or a tunnel or something. That's not going to happen. So it really kind of has to stand alone. And being that manufacturing warehouse, it's, again, that indoor use. So, yes, they're larger buildings, but they're not they don't have the outdoor activity. They're usually, I don't want to use the word attractive per se, but they can be landscaped. They can look good on the outside. So it kind of gives that buffer between what the darker purple is that allows that heavier industrial, and gives that buffer to 183, gives that buffer to the stadium site. So it's a hard site. We kind of went back and forth between commercial and industrial, but that's why he kind of explained it as a buffer, because the reality of commercial being here when there's all these other options, we thought is pretty low.
Sorry, going back, or unless it's the same, but isn't that residences on the right? Yes, right there.
Yeah, there's a mobile home park right here.
Inside the
Yep.
industrial.
So,
We aren't proposing to change that, we aren't proposing to protect that.
you are proposing to
We
protect?
are not.
You are not?
Not at this time. Since the 50s, this entire section has been encouraged to go industrial by City Hall. And so we're not stepping away from that at this time.
Isn't this area right by our data center that we just approved?
I was about to say, just across the street from the manufactured home is where we had a recently approved conditional use permit for a data center.
So the data center will be to the right,
Yes, to the east.
correct?
Yeah. Over here?
Right there, yeah, all of that.
It won't be the area in the dark, that's still PUD 6, but where the buildings are,
Yeah.
south of that is where that would be.
Right.
Okay.
They still have those, I think, 13 acres or something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. This here is off of Airport Freeway near William Brewster. This here's a church. It's right now the future land use designation is that if that is for traditional neighborhood. So if the church ever goes down, somebody would try to squeeze in R6, R75 lots. We'd like to take that to compact neighborhood so you could actually redevelop it for residential, because the R6, R75 lot size will not work in this area at all, so you need to look at something different.
Why doesn't it work?
The
I mean,
lot sizes.
It works
You
right
can't
next
put
to it, it looks like.
Yeah, you can't punch a road through and serve that, so you need to go with.
A road through from the south?
From the south, yeah.
You mean like, because it's not wide
Yeah,
enough for
yeah.
a city street?
If you punch a road through, you're not going to have enough space for the houses to go either side.
Well, I'm just looking at the width compared directly to the right. There's a Green Oaks Drive. It's about the same width, so.
Yep,
As far as,
Yeah.
the houses on each side of that street, and that's
Yeah.
about the same width as this parcel.
right. So you would have enough room for,
The house on each side of
for a house on
drive.
one side, or you'd have to get exceptions to try to squeeze in smaller,
And what
more
is-
compact.
I forget now, what, the compact neighborhood, what's the, how much, what's the density difference?
Let me go up here. You're looking at 8 to 20 units per acre as opposed to 4 to 7.
Okay.
So we'd like to be able to develop it without having to do the site plans to shrink the single-family lots. If it ever comes on the market, ever gets redeveloped.
And this is a good example of what we were talking about just a second ago with the fiscal analysis and, right, the infill and the cost of infrastructure and all that.
Right, but, and I didn't really see the point in getting into it because he has a lot of analysis left to do, but it seemed like the data he was giving is based on valuation at the time it's constructed. And that is one data point, but it's not really useful for what are values going to do 20, 30 years down the road with one asset class versus another. I'd be more interested to know that if we're really looking at what's sustainable, not really as interested in, what it is at the onset. I'm interested in how those asset classes, how the valuation changes over time. And I don't know the data, but I just kind of assume that a lot of these traditional neighborhoods see a better percentage rise in value, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Question I got for you. If we converted that over to R6 or R7, or we did compact neighborhood, what's the difference in the density that we're looking at?
It depends on exactly what goes in. The traditional neighborhood is 4 to 7 units per acre. The compact is 8 to 20 units per acre. So. All right, this here's a little piece of land on 183 at Wingren where TxDOT clipped a bunch of parcels. We had to take down the houses. We'd like to mark it as open space because it's really too small to do anything else with, and the city owns it. So over here on O'Connor, a few years back, city took some properties up and down the street to expand some right-of-way, and where we had to bulldoze the houses to expand the right-of-way, we put in a green belt. So I'd like to go ahead and mark that as open space.
But open space for what? Because it
already
doesn't look.
there.
There's a linear park that we've built.
Oh, the park,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I
walk-
was gonna
walk-
say.
So
You
right
see the
now, that's a
walkway.
bike trail there, and we'd
Yeah.
like to stay a bike trail since we put the money into it.
Troy, just a small typo on that last bullet on the left-hand side. I think you mean expansion of O'Connor there.
Yeah, you're right. Let's
Just a
mark
little,
that.
to fix that before council sees it.
I've always got to have at least one typo per presentation. Usually I spot it the minute I put it up in front of council, so I appreciate you catching it before that. All right. Okay. Over here off of 183 and William Brewster again, this here's across the street from the other site. We've got these apartment complexes here, Spanish Haven, Plymouth, let's see, there's a church right there. Spanish Haven here. We just had a zoning case here as well. We'd like to go ahead and mark this area here as suitable for mid-density residential to try to keep that housing stock in place. And we've got this site here that's a self-storage mini warehouses plus some regional commercial and some office. We'd like to go ahead and mark that entire area for regional commercial, which is suitable for mini warehouses. Just kind of protect what's existing there and tie it in, lock it down. So
I go back to the same thing here. You got regional commercial stuck in the middle of mid-density residential.
yeah,
Don't want to make the whole thing mid-density residential?
we might like to, but we can't politically get away with
Well,
it.
and it's zoned and built for a mini warehouse. So again, in 20 or 25 years, is that going to be demoed and built as multifamily? Highly likely it will not be. The mini warehouse will probably be there. So that's why it looks a little out of place, but that's why there was this piece of regional commercial, because that is what is there and probably will be because the investment's been made.
Is there something there right now?
Yes, it's a mini warehouse.
Yeah, it's mini
There's
warehouse.
mini warehouse in the back and then commercial in the front.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember where that's at on 183.
So that's, William Brewster.
Yeah, William Brewster,
Yeah.
183. It's let's see.
What other,
It's not too far from the mall is just a little bit over this way.
It's not that far from the mall?
Yeah, and then I think Story's over here.
Is it before the mall if I'm going west, or is it?
If you're going east, it's after the mall.
Okay, it's where those apartments are at, and somebody's
Yeah.
redeveloping one of those apartment complexes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there's an LITC project that just got approved over here.
Yeah.
So we're just
That's
looking at,
before Story, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're rebuilding, same number of units, but it's going to be a newer, refreshed version
Yeah.
of the property.
And then all the auto dealerships are over there.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Sorry, going back to the previous one, the one that was in 183 and Wingren,
183 in Wingren.
that one.
Okay.
I think it is that one, yes.
Yep.
The red one, right there to the right, yes. What's that zone for?
What's it zoned for? I'm not sure.
So you're
The
about to see
designation
a
is
zoning
regional
case for
commercial.
that coming up soon. So it's actually zoned for senior independent living facility, nursing facility, and assisted living. So they have plans for it, and we're preparing it now, so you're going to see it in June for a senior independent living community. And so, and there's also going to be a future land use request tied with that for multifamily, because it's going to be a condo, and so you're going to see that here pretty
Yeah,
quick.
I was about to suggest something with that, because
Yeah.
there is just residential right there to the north and to the west. And so, yeah, I mean, something more.
Yeah, we're working
towards-
on something now.
Right. Oh, perfect.
Where
Good to
they-
know. Yeah, they had come, but it was for an industrial building. They wanted to be like a warehouse building, I remember.
Well,
Champagne.
this was proposed to be an industrial, but someone did try to do
Yeah, I
industrial
remember,
here,
yeah.
and it was like a light industrial warehouse, and
huge
that was
one.
not supported.
But then didn't I thought the owner of that land that was gonna develop that condos for seniors.
The luxury ones,
Yeah.
that you said that's not,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not
for the-
affordable. Yeah.
Right, it's not affordable.
That's basically the proposal that you're going to see next month.
So they're changing what they had.
They changed it a little bit,
Were they able to ever pick up the property in the
That
front?
was in the middle.
No, in the very front, from the,
Yeah, it was a separate lot,
yeah, there was like a
yeah.
lot that really
It's kind of a
wasn't.
weird,
Was it this
right.
little cutout here,
Yeah, yeah.
that little thing?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, because it had an antenna on it.
yeah.
And they were kind of battling about it.
Yeah,
I
there was
think
an
I'm gonna work on that.
access challenge, and, yeah, we'll check that to make sure that that's clean, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This here is Beltline Road, heading north from Conflans up to, I forget what that is, like Willow Creek. And we've got the future land use plan currently designates this area here for local commercial. And then it has this row of warehousing marked for a traditional neighborhood. And this group of warehousing marked for regional commercial. And this park marked for regional commercial. And what we'd like to do is, since we're right there, 183 is right about here, we'd like to mark this local commercial area as regional commercial to try to draw on some of the business from outside. Just bring it all down to connect to this other regional commercial area. Would like to protect the single-family houses that have been swept up in that commercial designation, switch them back to traditional neighborhood. Would like to switch this strip of warehousing to regional commercial because it backs up to homes, so we don't really see homes taking over and facing other warehouses. We'll just protect the little small self-storage units and small businesses that are there. by bringing them into the regional commercial designation. This area that's full of warehousing, would like to go ahead and mark as manufacturing warehouse because it's off of the Beltline Road, so it's not going to get the retail traffic. It's in a step. And would like to go ahead and make sure that West Irving Aquatic Center is marked as a park instead of commercial site.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Everybody else okay?
Okay, over here on Perry Street, which is just east of downtown and the Heritage. This here's Nursery Road. Yep, Nursery Road and Perry Street. We've got an area that's designated for local commercial and business office, and also some neighborhood. This here's the cemetery. We'd like to go ahead and mark the cemetery area as public, semi-public. This area here is marked as a local commercial and office. We'd like to mark that for our mixed-use community village to tie into what we would like to do up here with the North Nursery Corridor neighborhood, the North Nursery Neighborhood Association, and also to better connect to the future growth in Heritage. And this area here that's currently designated for business office, which is supposed to be multi-story office complexes, would like to scale it down to local commercial to better reflect what's appropriate for that scale, given that the single-family neighborhood right next door in the downtown area. We don't see large office buildings constructed in downtown anytime soon.
Why are we keeping that one single lot there at the cemetery, the back of the cemetery?
Because that's a house. The rest of this is cemetery-owned. So as
So-
long as that guy's not going to sell to the cemetery, we're going to mark his house as a house.
So that, where it was a traditional neighborhood in the past, which you're now
Yes,
marking,
cemeteries
there's
bought
no,
those.
the cemetery has it? Okay.
Cemeteries already bought those.
Okay.
So we're just going to go and bring those in. Yeah. So. Okay. Over here is at Loop 12 between 356 and the railroad. We've got a bunch of little areas that are marked for a business office. Once again, we don't see large office buildings being placed there. So I'd like to bring that into regional commercial to take advantage of that freeway access down here, and also to stretch along 356. Just kind of swap it to something that's a little bit more likely given the location. All right, this here is a tricky little cleanup at O'Connor and Garwheeler. Back in the around 97, 98, 2000, right in there, the city of Irving started approving a lot of little townhomes and zero lot line developments in this in what was a single family neighborhood with huge lots, and would like to go ahead and protect those areas that were transformed and keep those as compact neighborhood like they were built as, and mid-density residential instead of encouraging a rollback. So we'd like to preserve the increased housing density on the places that we've made that transition in the past. And then there's also a couple of lots that belong to the school district that we'd like to bring into public, semi-public. Okay. And that there's the zoning for the sites where you can see that where we've switched a lot of zoning up to R35, RZLA, and RTH. Then up here on Royal Lane, Rich Point, we've got an office complex that was marked traditional neighborhood. Would like to mark that to business office. There's some utility lines marked business office. Would like to mark that as public, semi-public. And this here, I believe, that there's a wastewater pump station. So city-owned property would like to mark as public, semi-public, and get these areas cleaned up. And those are the changes that we're bringing forth this year for consideration. So if you have any questions, anything you'd like to go back to?
And if y'all, again, if you, because often we will find these because we're working on a case and we're kind of looking the area and we're saying, that doesn't look right, so I'll ask Troy to put it on the list. If y'all see something that you want us to look at or just reconsider or bring to the commission, please feel free to give us a screenshot and we'll put it on the list and put it up for review. Because that's the way a lot of these come up, is we just kind of stumble over them going, that just doesn't look right. So please feel free to be a partner with us in that.
Yeah, our zoning team's always seeing something go, why is that there? And
Somebody has some really good eyes and really thinks about these things when they look at them. It's very fine detail. Okay, so that takes us to the end of tonight's quarterly workshop. Our next quarterly meeting is August. I wanted to see, based on the survey that Troy and Jocelyn did for us earlier this year, if you all would like to have the data centers on that. And then I was thinking maybe Mark Wiggins could come in. He's our new Legislative Affairs Fellow. There is some potential legislation being proposed next year relating to shaping data center futures. So I thought that he might be able to talk about SB 8 as well as any other legislative updates that might be on the table for the city of Irving to discuss with our legislator down in Austin. Does that sound like a good topic?
I think so.
Yeah, no, that sounds good to me.
Do we want to have it earlier than August? I mean, I get questions every day from somebody about data centers, and I understand there might be another one coming down the pike. So do we want to have this earlier than August?
Other people may know, but I don't know of another one coming down. But
Then that's
I only
fine.
know what I need to know. So, yeah, we need some time to put it together and just to see, because a lot of the discussion points, especially at the state level, are much bigger than us. It's the larger water supply. It's how do you connect to electric? Do you connect to the electric system, or do you generate your own? If you do generate your own, then who regulates that? That is so much bigger than Irving. You know, ours is always just a land use discussion. Is this an appropriate place for this conditional use permit? We want to know how all those other things operate, but they're not within our control. So I think it's good to be educated on that, but I want to make sure that we understand kind of what our lane is of what we can control and what we can't control.
Is there?
I agree with you. There's certain things we can't control, but I can tell you the electricity, the water, whenever somebody hears there's a data center, that's one of the big concerns. So understanding that, I think, will help us when we're making our decisions.
Is there a way, as us as a city can put together a resolution to send to, like other counties have done, to send to the legislators and our senators, et cetera?
I think that'd be a good question for Mark.
Yeah.
To see, if
Very good
there's
question.
been discussions or process or anything like that. And I heard y'all discussing earlier that urban cities and counties are being approached very differently than the rural ones, because we do have zoning, we do have land use control, where in Texas, they don't. And that's one reason, one of many reasons. The expanse of land is a huge reason, but the rural counties are definitely getting targeted significantly more than some of the urban. Not the urban cities and counties, we would get it more because of our proximity, because of the location and the latency and just needing to be near the customers, where the bigger data center campuses are more just plain production. So it's different uses, but we're getting different pressures. They're definitely getting it harder than we are.
Well, and I think that legislature, they intend to determine at a state level how economic development and what tax incentives they're giving to these data centers. That's very key. So I think Mark would be an excellent choice as a complement to just educating us. Okay, so we'll keep it in August. Those will be the two topics, Mark and data centers. Mark will be broader than just data centers, but still, it's a good time to start talking about legislative updates for next winter. And we are adjourned. If there's no other questions, we are adjourned at 7:49. Thank you all for staying tonight.
I just wanted to give you all a heads up, we do have a heavy load in June, so wear comfortable shoes and bring a fuzzy blanket and, yeah. We don't know.
Bring snacks.
We don't know what happened,
Bring
but we've
snacks.
got about 14 cases, 14, 15 cases, yeah.
Last meeting, everything got deferred.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are new. We don't know why, we got this wave. I think Ken was out there holding everybody back, and then when he left, they're like, okay, it's free now.
Sent out an email.
So, yeah. Yeah, yeah.